Can the Denver Broncos keep that winning feeling going? Maybe get a little streak and do something they've never done before against Patrick Mahomes. We're going to find out, and we're going to talk about it on this special crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to a special crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Chiefs. My name is Sayre Bedinger, co-host of Locked On Broncos, here with Chris Clark, co-host of Locked On Chiefs. And this crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And thanks so much to every one of you that makes Locked On Broncos or Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as free to watch on YouTube. And we appreciate every single one of you out there that makes us part of your day, however you choose to do so. Chris, a little deja vu for you and I. We just chatted a couple weeks ago as the Broncos and Chiefs had a Thursday night matchup there in week 6. Here we are a couple weeks later. It's week 8. The Broncos are heading into their bye in week 9, but coming off a victory this time around as opposed to the last time you and I got a chance to chat. I know the Chiefs, they've been taking care of business as usual. Started off the season with a loss. Now here we are, and they're right back where they expected to be all along, right? So from your side of things, only a couple weeks removed from our last matchup, but what's the biggest storyline for the Kansas City Chiefs going into this matchup? Now we're playing in the Mile High City there in Denver.
A couple weeks ago, Kansas City was basically back in first place in the AFC. They were tied with they were tied with Miami. Now they're in still first place of the AFC when it comes to, seeding in the playoffs. And I know that's 10 weeks away, but the whole reason I bring it up, and I think the reason it's the biggest story for the Chiefs is, like you said, they lost week 1. And the Detroit Lions are a good team. I think that made a lot of sense. I don't think it's a horrible victory or a horrible loss on their part. But then to go and win 6 straight weeks and now be in a position where you are controlling your own destiny again after starting the season in kind of a slump, I guess you could say, without their best 2 players week 1. So now they're sitting in a position where they're controlling their own destiny in the AFC. And if they want to make a move for a player, that they could. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm not expecting them to make another move for a player after they brought in McCole Hardman last week. So I think that they're probably going to be pretty good. The other smaller story in my mind is Nick Bolton had surgery, will be back, and is not practicing, likely out for 6 to 8 weeks. But that's mostly been known since the injury happened on Sunday.
Nick Bolton has been a thorn in the Denver Broncos side, as if, a lot of players in Kansas City haven't been, but he's particularly been somebody that's tortured the Broncos a little bit in their recent matchups. I like that. I think it's a great storyline for the Chiefs, right? Obviously, you want to be able to be in a position as early as possible to control your destiny. A matchup in Denver, not quite the same level of difficulty as it used to be, maybe with Peyton Manning in town and things like that, but certainly an interesting opportunity for them here as we enter the midway point of the season. Like you mentioned, the trade deadline very close, which leads me to arguably the biggest storyline for the Denver Broncos, which is kind of twofold, right? It's, can you shake it off? Am I the first person, Chris, to use a Taylor Swift reference in the crossover episodes? I mean, I have a few of them, so just be keeping your ears tuned just in case you hear a couple of them. But can they shake off this losing streak against the Chiefs? And is this going to be one of their last times that we see the crew out there together that's been out there? Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain, Garrett Bowles. I mean, you could basically go up and down this 53-man roster, Chris, and name anybody that's been popping up in trade rumors lately. Kind of feels like anybody out there whose team is competitive wants to look at the Denver Broncos roster and say, hey, they've got this guy at this position of need for us. We could go after him. I think the focus, obviously, for the Broncos, since they haven't made any trades up to this point, is going to be on winning this game. I mean, this will likely be the Broncos Super Bowl this season since they didn't win the first matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. They want to get off the schneid. It's been 16 games. The last time they beat the Chiefs, Alex Smith was the starter. We've talked about that before. They've never beat Patrick Mahomes. I believe he's 12-0 against the Broncos, if memory serves me right, 11 or 12. And it's just a streak of dominance that's unlike anything Broncos fans have really ever experienced, Chris. So can they shake it off against the Chiefs, or is that just going to be one of their wildest dreams going forward? So that's where I'm at with the Broncos right now.
I look at this game for Denver and I understand what you're saying. It is their Super Bowl. And the reality for Kansas City is they have to look at every team that they're playing and expect the team's best, because it is probably going to be a Super Bowl for just about every team that they play. And the big thing that Kansas City has to make sure to not do this week is overlook the Broncos, because everybody's looking forward to the matchup next weekend against the Dolphins in Germany. But this is a game that Kansas City can't afford to lose, because this is a game they shouldn't lose. One of the things that could play into this, that we'll have to see how it turns out on Sunday. But right now, I just looked. I think the weather is supposed to be 34 degrees. There's possible snow, and I guess it could be rain depending on the temperature. But that could play a big part in the game. Kansas City hasn't been playing in cold weather, really. I mean, they've been playing in 50, 60 degrees, but nothing like what it could be in Denver on Sunday. So that could play into the game as well. But I agree with you. I think that it's a big question. I was expecting when we played the last time that I was going to be coming back and talking to you about players that the Denver Broncos had traded, because to me, it made sense that they were going to make moves in trade pieces because they're wanting to build for next year. I'm not trying to say that they're completely out of it this year, but the chances of them making the playoffs with their record currently is pretty slim. So, I understand why they want to win the game, and I understand why it's a Super Bowl, because they want to, hurt the Chiefs as much as possible, and I get that too. It's going to be could be a good game. I'm really curious to see how the weather affects it.
I am too. That's a great point that you brought up, because I forgot about that. I was there against the Packers this past weekend. It was 75 degrees, perfect weather. And now that's just how Denver is, I guess, at this time of year. So you never know what to expect. But yeah, to your point about the rumored trades and kind of thinking the roster could look different, we heard Sean Payton on Monday kind of discussing a little bit of that. Really, he's more along the lines right now, Chris, I think, of really wanting to see this team flip a switch, is the terminology that he used. And he referenced the 2022 Detroit Lions as a team that, he didn't mention these numbers specifically, but, they had the 32nd ranked defense through 7 games last season. They were 1-6, and they ended up 9-8 last year. And I think Sean Payton would rather have that type of turnaround, even if you don't make the playoffs, than to, as some Broncos fans want to see, tanking for draft positioning, right? And that's just I don't get the vibe that that's what they really want to do. I don't think that at all. I think they want to win as many games as possible. Certainly they want to win this game against the Chiefs, not just because it's divisional, not just because it's, AFC or things like that. They've had a long losing streak against the Chiefs. They want to end that. And I know the ownership wants to see that happen and things like that. So it's going to be a fun game, I think. I was kind of surprised by the last matchup between these two teams, Chris, where, I think I said on our crossover the last time that the first to 30 wins the game. I kind of expected the Broncos to be giving up a bunch of points, but oddly enough, turned out to be sort of a get-right game for them defensively. The defense has been playing much, much better since that matchup against Kansas City. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. And we are going to talk about some key matchups. I think there's some areas that the Denver Broncos are looking much, much better this time around, where they may be able to gain a little bit of an advantage against the Chiefs. But as we know, the biggest matchup are the Denver Broncos going to beat themselves? We're going to discuss some specific key matchups in this game, Broncos versus Chiefs, here week 8 of the NFL season, on a special crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs. And this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? Whenever the game clock stops, you already know what time it is. It's time to order in with DoorDash. All your favorite restaurants and stores, from retail to grocery, they're right there on the app. So you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. You get a hankering for some nachos during the game. Hey, order on DoorDash and get everything that you need delivered without missing a single snap. If you're in the Denver area, you're watching the game from home instead of going to the stadium, you got to order from a place called Illegal Pete's, the Mexican Coke carnitas in a burrito bowl with cilantro rice, fajita veggies, a little cheese, maybe some tomato vinaigrette on there. Chef's kiss, I tell you. And if you're in Kansas City, Chris recommends Joe's Kansas City Barbecue. I know that's what he's ordering during the game. So, hey, maybe you want to order a little something to enjoy Thursday night football as well. If you're listening to this on Thursday, maybe one of my favorite things to do with DoorDash every single week is order one of each flavor from Crumble Cookie. You cannot miss with that formula. And you can get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. That's 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. We're looking at specific matchups that could decide Denver Broncos versus Kansas City Chiefs here in week 8 of the 2023 NFL season. Two teams that feel like they're going opposite directions. One team trying to contend for another Super Bowl title, while the other team, the Denver Broncos, trying to figure things out and see if they have any sort of future against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs right now, the modern dynasty. Chris, I think that really when you look at this matchup, there's a lot of different things that I point to as things that are different about the Broncos this time around than they were even back in week 6, just a couple weeks ago. But from your side of things, what are some matchups that you're really looking forward to in this one?
The offense seems to get going just by Travis Kelce. He has had 2 monster games back to back, and it's whoever the Broncos decide to put on him and how they're going to try to guard him, because they weren't able to stop him really in week 6. The other thing that I want to point out, and I do agree with you, I think the Broncos defense has gotten better. Kansas City also kind of shot themselves in the foot against the Broncos. They had a lot of 3rd and shorts and could not get in the end zone once they got into the red zone. I think that that's going to be much better this time around. And one of the reasons I think that could be better is because you're sitting here looking at a situation where you get a full week of practice versus when you're in a normal situation when you're in a Thursday night game, you don't get that full week of practice. So maybe your timing's a little bit off of some of the plays. You're not able to run all the red zone things that you normally do, or your short yardage situations that you normally do in a normal week of practice. So I do think that should play into it. But when I'm looking at matchups, I think it begins and ends with Kelce when it comes to the offensive side for Kansas City.
Yeah, I think it does too. And that's arguably the number one matchup that I'm looking forward to as well. I was hoping to see more of the first time these two teams matched up against each other, Pat Surtain going up against Travis Kelce. And we saw a little bit of that over the course of the game. But really, to me, that's going to be a telltale sign if the Broncos are really able to make an adjustment. They've shifted some things in the secondary based on what we saw the first time around between these two teams. Damari Mathis is no longer starting opposite Pat Surtain. It's now Fabian Moreau, the veteran, and he played really well against Green Bay. He looked good out there. And the Broncos have also adjusted their slot corner. It used to be Sang Bassi. They just flat out cut him from the team. Jaquan McMillan has taken over that role in recent weeks, and he also has looked quite good. Justin Simmons is further removed from his injury. He's looking good. PJ Locke will be in the secondary with Kareem Jackson suspended. So it's just a completely different alignment back there in the secondary for the Broncos. But specifically, how are you going to defend Travis Kelce? Because, I mean, I think he just caught another pass, Chris, on what I saw this past weekend against the Chargers. Feels like the guy is always finding ways to get open. And certainly, that's just his game. That's what he is. He's going to get his. You kind of just figure on a weekly basis, like you can only hope to limit a guy like Travis Kelce. You can't really contain him or stop him. It's just something that you have to limit the damage that he can do and hope that you can force the ball to other guys. On the other side of the field, though, the Broncos running game has really been getting going. That is a matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing. The offensive line has, I don't want to say been imposing its will, Chris, but they've been executing really well. The Broncos running game has looked really good. They've been bringing an extra blocker out there quite often, and that extra blocker is typically Quinn Bailey, a reserve offensive lineman who reported as eligible, I think, about 8 or 9 times against the Green Bay Packers. So I think we can expect to see a lot more of that, and more Michael Burton, more Chris Manhertz, guys that maybe listeners of the Locked On Chiefs podcast haven't really heard of, because other than Michael Burton, of course, but like a guy like Chris Manhertz, he plays a key role for this Broncos team as a blocker. And I think that that's something that they really want to emphasize. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine, those guys are all playing quite well now here going into this matchup, which could kind of change the dynamic of this matchup between these two teams.
Definitely could. And if the weather is bad, that actually plays into Denver's favor in that regard if they're able to run the ball well. The big question when it comes to Denver and going up against this Chiefs team is really going to be, can they put points on the board? And are they going to be able to slow the offense down? And it's not that I don't think that Denver's defense can stop the Chiefs offense at all. I do think that there's going to be times when the Chiefs offense gets stopped. But if they get down 14 points or even worse than that, maybe 20, 21 points, that completely takes away the ability to feel like you can run the ball. And I think that that's something that Kansas City is going to continue to do. There's just a chart that just came out earlier today that I saw on Twitter. I think I retweeted it on my accounts. It's talked about how Kansas City has the most points scored, I think, in the NFL in the second quarter. I think they're over 12 or 13, close to 13 points per game in the second quarter. And that is actually more points than they've scored in all the 3 of the other quarters combined. So, that's really the big key. Is maybe they don't get it started in the first quarter, but they definitely score a ton of points in the second quarter. And if you go into halftime down more than 2 scores, the running game kind of goes away to a certain extent.
Yeah, and that means that the Denver Broncos are going to have to be on it with their script early on in this game. I mean, I think a common theme that we've seen in these matchups between the Broncos and Chiefs is, as I kind of mentioned right before we kicked it to this segment, that Broncos versus Broncos, right? Are the Broncos going to beat themselves with, ill-timed fumbles or poorly timed penalties? I mean, not that there's ever a good time for a fumble or a penalty, but certainly there's worse times than others. And it feels like the Broncos consistently have those kinds of issues when they play Kansas City. It's almost like they get so into their head that they just can't help themselves from making mistakes. So that's another matchup that, frankly, I am looking forward to, is that mental matchup. I mean, you saw the game last time, Chris. I mean, I don't know what you guys were thinking as Sean Payton called a timeout before the end of the first half and gave basically the Chiefs a free 3 points. I mean, yeah, you're saying thank you. You're sitting there like, well, I don't know why that happened or why. And he said after the game, it was a boneheaded mistake. But I mean, my goodness, those are the boneheaded mistakes that you cannot have against a team like Kansas City.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that specifically because I think that was a 62-yard kick, if I remember correctly, and would have been good from 72. And in Denver, that probably would have been good from 80. I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, it was ridiculous, the kick. But, yeah, thank you, Sean Payton, for that timeout. The other thing that really – and I can't give you a specific matchup because to me it's going to be the Chiefs defensive line versus the Broncos offensive line. And the reason I say that, and it doesn't really even go against the run, it's more against the pass. They just added Charles Omenihu last week. He had a huge presence, got a sack, knocked down another ball, was creating pressure. And that is without Chris Jones. They already had Chris Jones, and now you're adding Omenihu. Now he's going to be the second week in the system, back coming from his suspension. And the Chiefs defense haven't allowed more than, I believe, 20 points this entire season. The Detroit Lions scored 21, but one of those scores was a returned pick for a touchdown. So that doesn't count when you look at defensive scoring. They haven't allowed more than 20 points, and Denver's offense was not able to really move the ball until late in the game. And sorry, I'm just going to say this, got kind of blessed with a penalty down by the end zone.
They did, and then Cortland Sutton made a heck of a play on the ball there. So it was, you'll take them any way you can get them, right? But at the same time, yeah, they do have to move the ball better. The passing game has to be much better this week. And there's I think a number of different keys to victory for both of these teams, Chris. There's a number of things that have to go right for both the Broncos and the Chiefs in order to get a win in Week 8. And we're going to talk all about it. And we're going to break down keys to victory on this special crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Chiefs. This crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads where the Chiefs have gone from an opening line of 8.5-point favorites to just 7.5-point favorites. Or you could look at player props, including some unique weekly specials. Like you can combine players like Broncos running back Javonte Williams and Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker combining for over 150 rushing yards. Or maybe you like tight end Travis Kelce for the Chiefs and Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill to combine for 15 or more receptions. Those are some things that you can look at, as well as over-unders. And for this Broncos-Chiefs matchup, we're looking at an over-under of 46.5 total points. Just a couple of weeks ago, these two teams combined for just 27 total points. So that's a really interesting one to consider here in this matchup as well. And you can find all of these options and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And this crossover Thursday is also brought to you by Jase Medical. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, and it's important to be prepared. The Jase case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your Jase case with additional potentially life-saving medications based on you or your family's unique medical needs. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offerings, and in those efforts, they've added ivermectin as an option in the Jase case. And I've got my Jase case, which gives me peace of mind both when I'm at home and when I'm traveling. But funny enough, it also gave my mom some peace of mind knowing that we had these medications available to our family just in case we would need them. And hey, maybe you want to send a Jase gift card to someone in your family. You can do that just so they can get a Jase case and have some peace of mind of their own. Just fill out an online form, and one of Jase Medical's board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. And then they send your prescriptions to one of their partner pharmacies where your Jase order will be filled and life-saving medications mailed directly to your home. And not only that, but you can send your physician a message for some answers to treatment-related questions anytime. Go to jasemedical.com and enter the code locked on at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code locked on at jasemedical.com. We're jumping into the fourth quarter of this crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Chiefs. Shout out to all of you that make Locked On Broncos or Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day right here on the Locked On Network. Where your team every single day, Chris, anywhere that you can find podcasts. Always love hearing what you and Ryan have to say about the rival Kansas City Chiefs. And I know that you guys have some people who have been friendly over in our comment section as well at Locked On Broncos. So shout out to all of you everydayers out there that make us part of your day, however you choose to do so. Keys to victory in this game. I mean, there's a lot of things that got to go right on the Denver Broncos side of things, Chris, but I'm gonna kick it to you and ask what you think is a key to victory for Kansas City. Again, these two teams just played, but what do the Chiefs have to do to come away with a win in this game?
Well, I think I already talked about a lot of it earlier in probably the first segment. You look back at the game against the Broncos the last time up, and Kansas City got to the red zone multiple times, couldn't get the ball in the end zone, and that when you kick that many field goals, that's a big problem. So I think that's one of the biggest things is they got to get to a point where they're not doing that. And if they can continue to move the ball and get touchdowns instead of field goals, because that's what you're going to want to do, I think that's going to be a good situation. The other thing I will say, Kansas City, I think, wins this game as long as they don't beat themselves. And what I mean by that specifically is you have to play smart football, which I think they do for the most part, but you have to hold on to the football. You cannot turn it over. The turnover differential can kill you in any game. Doesn't matter who you're playing. As long as they are, I would say they could even go to -1 on the turnovers, maybe possibly -2. But you start giving the Broncos that many extra chances, that's going to be rough. So, if you can stay, -1 on the turnover differential, I think you're pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's what Sean Payton kind of talked about this past week, as the Broncos have done a much better job of taking care of the ball lately. I guess the last couple of weeks, not necessarily always against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not on some sort of hot streak of not turning the ball over against Kansas City, but that is certainly something that is going to be a key in this game, is limiting the mistakes. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, Chris, when we had this other matchup. And I agree with you. I think we've discussed some of these aspects that have to go right from either side, but the Broncos want to be able to win the giveaway takeaway battle. They can't be giving away the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, because they're already not going to be in a great position to be able to just outright get a win whilst making a bunch of mistakes, are they? That's not where the Broncos are currently at in terms of just their roster, their talent, and their ability level. But you do see quite a bit of things trending in the right direction, and you want to see them do so against a team like Kansas City. You don't want to have to come back from down 24-0. You don't want to have to overcome a fumbled punt return, or a botched reverse play, or an interception at the worst possible time, or at Russell Wilson getting stripped from behind. These types of things just can't happen in order for the Broncos to get a win against the Chiefs. We want to see them play a clean game. And as Sean Payton said after the team's victory over the Packers, he said, I was driving around the parking lot just fuming mad, he said. And he said the reason for that is because even in a victory, you're still searching for that perfect game. You get those opportunities in the red zone, you want to convert. You get the opportunity after a turnover, you want to get 7 points instead of 3 points. And so he's still searching for that in terms of that maybe signature win as the Broncos head coach, if you will. And I know he's only got 2 victories so far. They both come against NFC North teams. But really, in order for the Broncos to win this game, I said it before, I'll say it again, they got to stop beating themselves. They cannot have foolish mistakes at the worst possible time. And I'll add this, Chris. The Broncos passing game last time these two teams played was horrific. It was one of the worst I've seen in recent years. Big reason for that is the Kansas City Chiefs were getting their hands up at the line of scrimmage, right? They weren't always getting home with the pass rush, but they were affecting the passing lanes in that way. They knocked down a number of Russell Wilson passes at the line of scrimmage. So will we see the Broncos maybe open things up a bit more downfield so that Russ isn't risking constantly having the ball batted at the line of scrimmage? I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Kansas City is very good at doing that against anybody. That's one of the things that George Karlaftis has been fantastic at since he came in the league. And like I said, who had one last week as well, I think, as well as Chris Jones. The other thing that I would add for the Broncos to win, at least in my mind, is you talk about not having the turnover battle, but not even just the turnover battle, is you can't take sacks and you can't take negative plays. Like, we always talk about stay ahead of the sticks, and I agree with that. But it doesn't matter if you stay ahead of the sticks on first down and get 5 yards if you give up, losing 6 the next play because you run a reverse and it doesn't go anywhere. So it's a clean game plan from the Broncos, and not getting tackled for loss is really going to help them. Kansas City, I would say that's one of their areas where they need to work on, but they seem to find a way to get first downs on 3rd and 10 more often than not, it seems. So it doesn't seem to haunt them near as much, but staying in that type of situation where you have a 3rd and long against this defense and they're able to pin their ears back to come after the quarterback is not where Denver wants to be.
It's not. It's certainly not. As far as what we think is going to be the outcome of this game, Chris, I'm going to say 1st to 25 wins. I know last time I said 1st to 30. I'm going to knock that back to 25 points. I know we said it earlier. The over-under for this game, 46.5 points. That sounds about right, I suppose. And so I'm going to say 1st to 25 wins. And, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe the Broncos finally get off the schneid here. It's been a long, long time. So I don't know. They're playing at home. They're coming off a win. They're going into their bye week. This could be some guy's last game with the team. I'm going to stay optimistic and say, hey, they've got a shot. I didn't think they were going to only allow 19 points last time. Felt like they would give them a little bit of a fight, maybe more offensively, but they didn't do that. Maybe this time around they do, like you said, have a better game plan in place. So I'll stay optimistic on that. What do you say as far as prediction for this game?
I think Kansas City is starting to find their way on offense. I think that you look at the receiving core around Travis Kelce and you see a guy stepping up in Rashid Rice, and you saw him, McCole Hardman get involved last week. You saw MVS get involved last week. You saw Sky Moore get involved last week. If all those guys continue to be involved in this passing offense, it's going to be hard to stop. But again, I go back to the question of what's weather going to be like. It could change by the time that we end up playing because we're recording this Wednesday night. But right now, 34 and a chance of snow. That's not going to help the passing game very much. But I do think Kansas City's gotten their offense going, and I think they're probably going to score closer to 30 this time around. But I would say I would be surprised if the Broncos get over 17, mainly because that's how well the Chiefs' defense is playing. And you saw the last time they played him, they really gave Russell a hard time throwing the ball. And if the Broncos can't throw the ball, regardless of how much they are able to run it, I don't think they're going to be able to score more than 17.
It'll be tough. It's a tough Chiefs defense, and certainly this is the last time we're going to get a chance to see a Broncos team get a shot at the Chiefs until 2024. So what's going to go down? Are they going to have a bad taste in their mouths again for another almost calendar year, or are they going to get that out of their mouth and are they going to get a win finally? We'll see what happens. It should be fun either way. Always love talking to you, Chris. Always love the crossover Thursday episodes. And once again, shout out to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos or Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. We'll see you next time.